A gute Woche and welcome to the Daily Tanya for Shabbos, the 10th day of Shvat. 10th day of Shvat, of course, is the yahrzeit of the Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, who passed away in 1950. On this day, the Rebbe, a year later, officially accepted the leadership. And it's interesting, the Frierdiker Rebbe, he was the one who divided the Tanya to be studied on a daily basis. And for the 10th day of Shvat, on a leap year, he made to study the entire chapter 19, and which ended up, of course, later to be the day that he passed away. And it's interesting, and in this chapter that we're going to learn now, talks about the love, the hidden love that a Yid has to Hashem, and that a Jew is ready to give his life up for Hashem. And that is something that the Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, also discusses in the Hasidic discourse, Basi Legani, that we all study on the day of his yahrzeit, that he himself issued on the day of his, that he ended up passing away on that day for Yud Shvat. So, what are we talking about in this chapter? Chapter 19, that we're going to learn. The Rebbe continues explaining, what is it? What is the hidden love, the Pintele Yid, that the neshama, the soul of a Jew, is compared to a candle, to a flame. There's something unique about a flame. He says the flame by nature wants to go up, wants to separate itself, even though he explains why it does so, because it wants to be included in its source, in the root, the source of the fire. When you take also a small flame, put it next to a big flame, the little flame wants to be included in the big flame. Not that it has a desire, but it's by nature. And this is something which goes against most realities. Everything and anything wants to exist, or do everything to keep in its own existence. But here the flame it's by nature, it wants to be included into its source. And the same thing, says the Rebbe, is the neshama. The godly soul. We have the animal soul in us and we have the godly soul. Our animal soul, the nature is to exist and to do everything to be here and to exist. The godly soul has its nature to connect to its source, which is God himself, even though by doing so, by being included in God, it's going to lose its own identity completely. It's going to be included in godliness and no more its own identity. But nevertheless, this is its nature. Now, this is the nature of the love that we have to be included in Hashem, except that this is hidden. It is as if it is asleep by people who have live a physical, material life. Anyone that does not live his life in that way, in a godly way, that essence of the neshama is asleep. And it does wake up when a Jew feels that his life, his spiritual life, is in danger. His connection with God is in question. Then this comes out. It wakes up. And hereby the Alter Rebbe explains the other two questions, if you remember what we asked in last chapter. Yes, 4 questions, where it says 4 things, 4 points that we need to clarify about the hidden love. We asked, what is the source of the hidden love of the neshama? We asked, how is it a inheritance from our ancestors? And we asked, what is the nature of their love to Hashem? And we asked also, how is fear of God included in this love? So in the previous chapter, he answered that two other questions. What is its source? What is the source of the neshama, of the hidden love? This is the chachma. We explained this is in the wisdom of the soul. And we explained, you can go back to the previous chapter, we explained what is the wisdom. The wisdom is the concept of complete nullification. The flesh, just like in terms of logic, the wisdom represents the flesh, that you receive something which is outside of you. It's not your doing. The wisdom is the awareness. You become aware of something new, something from outside. And then you have the bina, understanding. This is the processing of it. So in terms of the neshama, the wisdom is the part of the neshama which is completely nullified to Hashem and is completely open and complete nothing there. And this is why in the wisdom, this is the source where the connecting point of godliness, the godly light in our soul. That is the source. And then we talked about why is it an inheritance from our ancestors, and we explained this also because Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they were a merkava, they became a chariot to Hashem, completely nullified of their own will, and they changed their nature in that way, became a spiritual nature, and that's why they were able to inherit to their children forever this kind of soul. So let's continue now inside in chapter 19. It says the Alter Rebbe, to further elucidate the nature of the hidden love, it is necessary to clarify the meaning of the verse, Neir Hashem Nishmas Adam. The soul, the neshama of man, is a candle of God. And he explains, Pirush sheYisrael akroim Adam Nishmasam hi lemashal ka'oir haneir. This means that the souls of Jews who are called men, as our sages remark, the Jewish people are called men. So then neshama are, by way of illustration, like the flame of a candle, whose nature it is always to flicker upward. Says the Alter Rebbe, why is that nature? ולדבק בשורשו למעלה ביסוד האש הכללי שתחת גלגל הירח כמו שכתוב בעץ חיים. It says because the flame of the fire intrinsically seeks to part from the wick that holds it and to unite with its source above in the universal element of fire, which is in the sublunar sphere, as explained in Eitz Chaim. It says this is the source of the fire in the sublunar sphere, and that is why he wants to elevate and connect itself, even though it loses its identity, as the Alter Rebbe continues to say. Although thereby, by parting from the wick and becoming part of its source, it would be extinguished and would emit no light at all here below. And not only that, it will lose its entire identity, even when it's connected to its root. Also above in its source, its identity would be lost within that of its source, become part of its source. Nevertheless, that is the instinct, that is the natural desire of the flame to go up. Yet this is what it desires by nature, meaning it constantly strains upwards, as though this was its conscious desire. Says the Alter Rebbe, the same thing is the neshama of a Jew. Just as the candle constantly seeks to reunite with its source, so also the neshama of a Jew, and also the level of ruach and neshama, which is the lower levels of soul, also want to separate itself from the hold of the body and connect itself to Hashem. The soul naturally desires and yearns to separate itself and depart from the body and to unite with its origin and source in God, blessed be He, who is the fountainhead of all life. הגם שתהיה עין ואפס ותסבטל שום במציאות לגמרי. ולא יישאר ממנו ממאוסו ועצמוסו הראשון. And though thereby it would become null and naught, and its identity would there in its source be completely nullified, with nothing at all remaining of its original essence and self. It's not just that the soul wants to separate itself and die. It wants to, even after death, the soul remains the same, the identity of a soul. But being included in Hashem, it's completely losing its identity. Nevertheless, that is the desire. It is its will and desire by its nature. And Alter Rebbe here notes also what is the term nature. Nature means something that is a set thing. It's not a nature, it's a borrowed term. Nature is an applied term for anything that is not in the realm of reason and comprehension. וגם כאן, הכוונה שרוצן וחפץ זה בנפש אינו בבחינת סתם ודעת ושכל מושג ומובן, אלא ממילא מהדעת ושכל המושג ומובן. Here too he says, with regard to the soul's desire to unite with its source, the inference of the word nature is that the soul's will and desire is not based on reason, knowledge and intelligence that can be understood, but rather it's beyond the grasp and comprehension of rational intelligence. But this nature is the soul's faculty of Chachma. And as discussed in the previous chapter, Chachma, the wisdom, is a faculty that transcends comprehension. A faculty wherein the light of the blessed Ein Sof abides. And as a result, the soul is drawn to its source, the Ein Sof, with longing beyond comprehension. The Rebbe goes on to say that this is the difference between holiness and something which is not holy. Holiness is about self-nullification. Anything which is not self-nullification, even if it's very noble things, noble ideas, people want to give, want to contribute, want to do good things, but in many cases they do it because of self-gratification. It feels good to give. So it's not about nullification. So it's not any more holiness. Can be fine, can be beautiful, but it's not holiness. Holiness is about complete self-nullification to Hashem. This is a general principle in the whole realm of holiness. Holiness, Kedusha, is only that which derives from Chachma, called Kodesh Elyon, supernal holiness. Abatel b'metzius be'oirin soif baruch hu amelubash boy ve'einoi dava b'fnei atzmoi kaniskar leil. Its very existence is nullified in the light of the blessed Ein Sof, which is clothed in it, and it is not a thing apart, as explained earlier. That's why Chachma makes up the word koach ma. The koach ma means the power of humility, the power of what? What is it that it's completely nullified in humility? Now this stands in direct contrast to the klipa and sitra acha from which are derived the souls of the Gentiles. The avdin legamayu ve'amrin hav aliteni, who act only for themselves, saying, give, give. And as Esav said, feed me. So again, it's not necessarily a bad thing. They're doing good things, but it's all about self-giving to them. Kedusha, holiness, it gives, and the other side takes. Even if it takes good things, but it takes. In order to be independent being and entities separated from God, as mentioned earlier, that Likutei is a separate and distinct entity, far removed from God, in direct contrast to Chachma, whose nature is humility and self-nullification. And therefore, those of the realm of Kalipas, are described as dead. Dead. Why? For wisdom, Chachma gives life. Hence, that which is the opposite of Chachma lacks life. True life is connected to Hashem. Hashem is the true life. If you're being a separate being, then it's not connecting to Hashem. And it is written, they die without wisdom, meaning death is a direct result of lack of wisdom, lack of Chachma. Therefore, the nations that receive their life force from Kalipa are considered dead. And the same thing is true also to the people, the Jewish people, who are sinners. Before they get an opportunity to discover that part of the neshama, are also considered dead in that sense. Just as the heathen nations are called dead, so too are the wicked and the sinners of Israel, but only before they are put to the test of sanctifying God's name. Because once they put to the test, that life, that chachma, and the neshama within it wakes up. Until then, before it wakes up, it is in a state of exile, in a state of sleep. But the faculty of chachma in the divine soul, with the spark of godliness from the light of the blessed Ein Sof that is enclosed in it, they are in a state of exile in their body within the animal soul, in the realm of klipa, in the left part of the heart, which reigns over them and dominates their body. And this is besoid golus hashchina kanis kalael, this exile of the faculty of chachma. While the animal soul dominates the body, this echoes the esoteric doctrine of the exile of the Shekhinah. Now, the Shekhinah, the divine presence, is in exile, as mentioned earlier. That means it functions in a body, but it doesn't do what it wants. It's like in captivity. And that's why this love that every Jew has is called the hidden love, because you don't necessarily feel it under normal circumstances. For this reason, this love found in the divine soul, whose wish and desire is to unite with God, the fountainhead of life, this is called the hidden love. An apparent contradiction in terms. Love denotes a manifest emotion and is not at all hidden. Why is that? For it is hidden and veiled in the case of the transgressors of Israel, in the sackcloth of the klipa. The evil covers it. The other side, the dark side, covers this kedusha, the holiness of the neshama. And what happens there? This is also part what the Rebbe says in the Ma'ira Baselegani, that this brings a foolishness to the person to commit a sin, thinking that it's no big deal, it doesn't affect me much, it doesn't separate me from Hashem. From the klipa, there enters into them a spirit of folly, which leads them to sin. As our sages remark, a person does not sin unless a spirit of folly enters into him. We think that's no big deal. And that's what leads a person to sin, because you don't feel the love that you want, that your neshama is connected and loves Hashem. However, says the Alter Rebbe, that exile is only in the parts of the neshama that is manifested and light shines in the body. But the essence of the soul is never in exile, it's only in a state of sleep. But this exile of the faculty of Chachma affects only that aspect of it which is diffused throughout the nefesh and animates it with the divine vitality. Yet the root and core of the Chachma in the divine soul is in the brain. And it does not clothe itself in the sackcloth of klipa, in the left part of the heart, in a true state of exile, meaning so that it be powerless to prevent one from sinning. That essence can never be in exile, except it is only dormant, only sleeping, in a state of sleep. It is merely dormant in the case of the wicked, not exercising its influence within them, meaning not creating within a Jew the spirit of self-nullification before God that it ought to create, as long as their knowledge and understanding are preoccupied with mundane pleasures. So if you're busy with mundane pleasures, it puts the neshama to sleep. However, sometimes it comes and wakes up. Different people wake up in different points. This is the breaking point that wake up people. When they feel that they're being separated from Hashem, all of a sudden that neshama kicks in and they wake up and they wouldn't do it. However, when the wicked are confronted with a test of faith, which transcends knowledge, touching the very soul and the very faculty of the Chachma within it, the source of faith, then it arises from its sleep, meaning the Chachma reveals itself. And it exerts its influence with the divine force that is clothed in it. As it is written, then the Lord awakened as one out of sleep. And what this does is that a person would suffer all kinds of sufferings, and it would give his life up, not to deny Hashem. The relation of the Chachma, even the sinner, leads him to withstand the test of faith in God without any reasoning or knowledge that he can comprehend, which would motivate him to sacrifice his life. And this to prevail over the klippos, the other side, and over his desires toward worldly matters, both permitted and forbidden, which he is accustomed to indulge. He was accustomed to indulge in those things. So at this time he will stop it. He's not going to do it. And even to despise them. When that neshama wakes up, you're going to despise anything which was very desirable things to do. And he would choose and to choose God as his portion and his lot, so that he's prepared to offer his soul to God in martyrdom for the sanctification of his name. And although this person was not religious at all, his entire life he was not religious. Although the klippus prevailed over him all his life, and he was impotent against them. As the rabbis have said, that the wicked are under the control of the heart. A person is indulged into lust and material things and all kind of passions. He's no longer in control, like we spoke about it in the last chapter. Nevertheless, even a person like that, nevertheless, when he faces a test challenging his faith in the one God, a faith whose fountainhead is in that level of the divine soul called the heights of the holiness, namely the faculty of Chachma, in which is clothed the light of the Ein Sof, blessed Mehi. Then all the klippos, all the opposition of godliness, they become nullified as they vanish, as though they had never been in the presence of God, of the Lord. So it is written, all the nations, including also the klippos, are as nothing before him. And for all your enemies, O Lord, referring also to the klippos, which are the enemies of God, all your enemies will perish. They will be scattered. And it says another verse, and again, as wax melts before fire, so shall the wicked perish. And the hills, referring to the klippos, which are compared to hills by reason of their hauteur, they melted like wax. Says the Alter Rebbe, so now this explains the nature of this love. The nature of this love is to be included in Hashem. And now finally the Alter Rebbe goes to answer the last question. How is fear of God included in it? And the Alter Rebbe is going to explain that when you love Hashem so much, that love becomes revealed. You are fearful to lose the connection. And therefore, even a minor thing that seems like so unimportant, you're not going to do it. Even if they tell you just to bow down, even without meaning anything, to the idol or something. You wouldn't do it because you're fearful to separate yourself from Hashem. Continues the Alter Rebbe, Oir Hashem Ein Sof Baruch Hu HaMelubash B'Chochma Shebenefesh Godel V'Otzim Kol Kach. The force of the divine light of the Ein Sof that is clothed in the soul faculty of Chachma is so intense. Legaresh ve'litchois asitra achre ve'aklipes shelo yuchlu igu afilu bilevushav. As to banish and repel the sitra achre and the klippos so that they are unable to touch even its garment. What is the garment? Namely, the thought, speech, and action that expresses one's faith in the unity of God, which means the Hainu explains Lamed ben Isoin limsoin nafshi afilu shlo ilas izrak eze ma'ase levad neged emunas Hashem echad kegoyin lishtachves laved zara af sheinu mayim bin bob klal belibay. This means that the divine light vested in the Chachma enables him to withstand a test of self-sacrifice to the extent of even refusing to do a mere empty act that is contrary to his belief in the one God. For example, to bow down before that idol, even without acknowledging it in his heart at all. Like this is the story of Hannah, Shiva's Baneh, Hannah and the 7 sons, that even the little baby, the king told them to bow down, just to bend down and pick up the ring that he threw on the floor so people would think that he's bowing to the idol, and he refused, and he died because of that. So this is the fear that comes into the love, the fear of not wanting to be separated from Hashem. וכן שלא לדבר תויר חס ושלום על אחדות השם, אף שאין פי וליבו שווים, רק ליבו שלום אמונת השם. So too, he will sacrifice his life so as not to speak falsely, God forbid, concerning the unity of God, even when his words do not reflect his true feeling. For his heart is perfect in its belief in God. This is called the fear contained in love. Meaning, the natural love found in the divine soul of all Jews, whose intrinsic desire and will is to be attached to its origin and source, the light of the blessed Ein Sof. שמפני אהבה זו ורוצן זה יראה ומפחדס בטבעו מנגויה בקצי תומאס עבודה זו חס ושלום שנגד אמונת השם אחד. For by virtue of this love and desire, it intrinsically recoils in fear and dread from touching, God forbid, even the fringe of the impurity of idolatry, which denies the faith in God's unity. Even where such contact involved only its outer garments, namely, idolatrous speech and action without any faith whatsoever in the heart, in the vitality of the idol worship. So this is the end of this chapter, the long chapter 19. As what's saying that the Rebbe's father, Rabbi Yitzchak, was a rabbi of Dnipropetrovsk, today. And then it was in the time of the communists, and the people needed, there was a questionnaire for the people. They were asked, everybody had to answer whether they believe in God or not. And the Rebbe's father then gave a speech in the synagogue that they shouldn't lie, should tell the truth. Because if you write it, even if you don't think so, it's like denying Hashem. And there was this, one of the congregants, his wife answered the questionnaire for them because she was afraid that, if you say you're going to believe in God, you're going to lose the job and everything. So she lied. She says, no, we don't believe in God. And after the speech of the Rebbe's father, he went back to the office and he said, I want to change the questionnaire. And he put especially, I do believe in God. The Jew believes in Hashem. Later on, they arrested the Rebbe's father. They asked him, why did he tell them to write this? He says, I know, I just wanted to make sure that they do exactly what you guys want. You guys only want the truth, right? So I wanted to make sure that they're being truthful. So this is the end of today's shir, and Hashem will continue at tomorrow's shir. Have a wonderful day and a good week.